Nice.
All right. Well, now to go in a completely different direction, we're going to go to a 30-minute album by the Jesus Lizard from 1990. So going back 5 years ahead of this. We're going to greatest of all time. First name greatest, last name ever, Josh, right here. The Jesus Lizard, who somehow we didn't cover in 1990. I kind of am shocked we didn't cover this because it shows up on so many best of lists ever. I will give a very quick thumbnail sketch of Jesus Lizard since we did a full-on bio before. Luckily, these next two bios, it's not that they're boring, but they're a little bit more streamlined because of the length of the band's tenure. But the Jesus Lizard is an American band formed in Austin, Texas in 1987 by vocalist David Yao, guitarist Dwayne Dennison, and bassist David W.M. So Sims. So the W.M. is for William. So David W.M. for William Sims is a stylized version of the name. They relocated to Chicago in 1989, where, and this is not going to shock you at all, Josh. In fact, I'll even let you guess. When they got to Chicago, they found who they described as a kindred spirit. Now, if Matt was here, he'd be all over this. Who did they find in Chicago, Josh, that helped to guide their first two albums?
Would that be Steve Albini?
You are correct, Josh, because boy, does this album sound like a Steve Albini album, doesn't
Sure
it?
does.
So,
Yep.
And they, he becomes their recording engineer for the next two albums. They add Mac McNeely, the drummer, and instead of just making their own music, they now begin to perform live, get a little bit of a buzz, and become one of the leaders of noise rock in America in terms of Critical Darling and sort of an act that became a sort of like a act that was called out on tour by a lot of famous groups. They did a split single, which is something I don't think I'd ever heard of before, which is like an A-side and a B-side from different bands, right? So they did a split single actually with Nirvana as well. The band did kick around until 1999 when they eventually disbanded. And that's a little bit of just a little bit of color so you know what was going on with them. I will say it's a very interesting cover because the cover looks like fire when you look at it, but it's actually a picture of a topless woman with a close-up image of nails projected upon her body. So it's like a Rorschach test. You know what I mean? Like different stuff. But you can see it when you look at it. But yeah, I thought that was very interesting. And this was a well-regarded album. It was actually rated the 38th best album of the 90s by Pitchfork, and it did make Rolling Stone's original top 100 albums of the 90s when they did it before they kind of made it a little bit more, I guess, representative of different genres. So
okay. Interesting.
So, what do you think about this one?
Well, I have real mixed feelings about this album, and it's mainly because of the production. I totally, thank God for CTS because I can totally see where this album is coming from on so many levels.
You don't love being assaulted by drums, like because that's how I felt listening to this album.
Yeah, it's like they're playing in a cave or like underwater or something. It's so annoying at times, and it's I can tell the band is talented. I can tell their influences. They're so indebted to post-punk in a lot of ways. Some of the bands that we really and I really gravitated towards, like Gang of Four, or Pere Ubu, or even somebody like Captain Beefheart, I can see as being a influence on them. All of that is kind of hindered by the production sound. I don't like how everything is. Well, you say it's like mixed evenly, like everybody's got the same level. You can't really hear everything
except
clearly.
for the guitar is mixed so far in front of everything else, which is a Steve Albini thing. And then the drums have that thing where they're mixed in the back, and the
Yep.
bass is almost inaudible at times, but the drums, like, they hit so precise. Like, you hear, like, every iota of the sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, of them. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah. And so all of that being said, that doesn't work for me. I don't like this production sound. I think the fact that they are, classified as noise rock does not, that again, like that production, I feel like they could be amplified or enhanced so much more by a different production style on the sound. And so it just unfortunately kept coming back over and over, even though I liked a lot of this album and some of the things they were doing. And I didn't even have a problem with the fact that it was noise rock. I liked
Yeah, which is surprising because that's not your favorite genre.
I know. And so that's kind of a testament to, I think, how good this band is. I liked a lot of the guitar parts. There's no question that this is kind of an abrasive album, not just in the production, but also the vocals. And there's a very like staccato nature to this band. They kind of really start and stop at different times completely. There is some, I would say, some like punk rock elements to them as well, just in terms of aggressiveness and speed. There is some good rhythm on this as well, for as much as you can hear the rhythm section. Monkey Trick is a song in the middle that I really liked. I can see
it's like a Pixies song, isn't it?
Exactly. Yep. I wrote that down. Lady Shoes, there's like an Arctic Monkeys guitar part at the beginning that I really liked, that reminiscent of that. And even the Pixies too. That's another kind of touch point on a song like Carpus. Lead singer at times sounds like
I think it's funny that like in 1998, after they like cut ties with Steve Albini after a while,
yeah.
They worked with several different producers for their album in 1998, including Andy Gill of Gang of Four.
Interesting. Okay.
John Cale also is there, which is interesting. And then Jim O'Rourke, who we're going to cover later and who does a little bit of work with Sonic Youth as like a unofficial band member, is there. So, and all of them make sense when you hear the sound. Yep.
And so I like, there's not a lot of melody or hooks necessarily on this album. There's it's very abrasive. I think I said that word before already, but it's not going to be for everyone. If you're into some of those other bands I mentioned, you might like this band a lot. And but there was just a real sticking point for me with the production ultimately, and so I can give it a mild thumbs up, but it's not going to be one that I revisit. I'm glad I listened to it ultimately, and I feel like this is an important piece in terms of like filling in a gap or my knowledge and appreciation of things. But this is very, I would say, like a niche type of sound or subgenre that if you're like into it, you're going to be really into it. But it's going to be an uphill battle or challenge to kind of like try and get into it, especially if you haven't listened to anything like this before.
Yeah, I don't know if I can see why it didn't break through to the mainstream. I don't know if it's like so abrasive that like it would be a bridge too far for people that are listening to like harder rock or punk along the way, because it's there. So I get what you're saying, but it's Steve Albini's such an interesting one for me, because like sometimes his production style works for me, like Rid of Me by PJ Harvey, right? Like it the spareness of it, right? Like gave a little bit of intensity to it because he was famously an intense guy. I like In Utero as well, like famously a Steve. So like there's times when he did albums that like the production style worked. I agree with you, Josh. It's a little bit of a barrier here because it doesn't work as well. Like Jesus Lizard's a pretty darn good guitar band, and they're doing things that are a little bit like creative. And I think you go to Steve Albini when you want like almost like a spare, like nihilistic sound kind of would be how I'd describe it. And like this album, I feel like had more going for it than that. And it's not that that's not like a good sound, but like he really is. It's all or nothing with me for the
Yeah.
sound. So I very much relate, Josh, because it's not like I know they always describe it as having an uncompromising sound, is how whatever you read about like him, right? It's like
Hmm.
that's the first thing they say. But so the production, yeah, not my favorite thing in the world. It is it is mixed together, but the guitars do get shoved in the front a little bit. Another, you know, version of this production style where it does work is Fugazi, which I see a lot of like Fugazi and Jesus Lizard overlap as well in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what they sound like. But I I was left like kind of like you, Josh. There's like DNA of this, and sonically this is right up my alley, but there just seemed to be something missing on some of the tracks. Like I would have liked, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I would like them to have gone a little bit longer and explored the space a little bit more on certain tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like wish they would have taken some of the digressions they did and like I guess just stayed there for a little bit more so I could have like heard what it would have sounded like. It sounds so weird to tell a noise rock band to do that because some of it,
Right.
it is, you know what I mean, like doing that. But I'm not doing a very good job of articulating it. But this is a great. It's a much better headphones album than it is
Mm-hmm.
like an In the Air album. Because when you listen to that, it becomes a little bit more assaultive. But like I've mentioned that, and Matt has too, that like I kind of like assaultive music that sort of creates like a white noise to it as
Yeah.
well, and like this album can definitely fit like some of the noise rock does. And it's definitely, if you're someone who likes noise rock, it's not going to be hard for you to jump in like to this album. When I say noise rock, what I'm talking about is exactly what I just mentioned before, which is really loud music designed to be listened to in headphones that also creates sort of an odd calming sense
Mm-hmm.
like when you listen to it, like a buzz and a hum along the way. So I'd still give this one a thumbs up, but with the caveat of it does what I want an album to do too. It caused me to want to explore more of their catalog, and I know the album after this is also well regarded. However, it is also an Albini production, Josh, so
Mm.
maybe not your favorite. But
Yeah.
I would be curious to hear what this song sounds like in the hands of like, you know, members of the Velvet Underground, the Gang of Five, and Jim O'Rourke. I could tell you that. And
Right.
part of me is like, I want to listen to that 1998 album because there's enough I liked about this album that I'm like, in the hands of different production style, um, you know, I'd be game for it. But I know what you're saying, Josh, and it's hard because like Steve Albini's, you know, one of those people that people either love or hate, and I oddly enough am like, I don't love or hate him. It just all comes down to like who's singing and what the album is. And I really think he's best. Like you don't want to do more than one album with him. You just do one album that gets that feel, and then you kind of
Mm-hmm.
move on from there. Because if you do too many albums with him, it starts to define your sound.
Yep.
So
Yeah. Good
there you
point.
go. Absolutely. Any final thoughts on this one?
No, I think.
This
No, I
is
think
what
you
I'd
summed
love
it
to
up.
hear Matt's take on this too, because
Yeah.
it's a shame we don't have him this week because I think we would have really benefited from uh, like him as a divergent voice on this. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
have to pick his brain on what he thought about this one.
Well, surely he can fit a 30-minute album in, even if he doesn't have to
I'd
pay
like to
too
think
much
so.
attention. Yeah.
Lazy bastard.